The night I discovered what my family was really doing with Preston Pharmaceuticals, I was working late in my father's office as chief financial officer and the CEO's daughter. I had access to everything, or so they thought. "Julia, honey, you work too hard," Dad always said, patting my shoulder with paternal pride. "Just like your old man." What he really meant was, stay busy with the obvious tasks. Don't look too closely at the hidden ones. Don't question why certain numbers didn't add up, or why some files were marked executive access only. But that night, exhausted and frustrated after another board meeting where my concerns had been dismissed, I decided to look closer. The irregularities had been bothering me for months. Clinical trial results that seemed too good to be true. Research budgets that fluctuated wildly. And most concerning, a pattern of small pharmaceutical companies being acquired and then mysteriously shutting down their most promising drug trials. "You're being paranoid," my brother Michael had said that morning, barely looking up from his phone. As chief operating officer, he should have been more concerned. "The numbers are fine. Focus on the quarterly reports." But the numbers weren't fine. And after everyone had left for the day, I finally found proof. Hidden in an encrypted folder marked Project Phoenix were the real clinical trial results. Not the ones we'd submitted to the FDA, but the actual data showing our new wonder drug had failed spectacularly. Worse, it had caused severe side effects that had been carefully covered up. My hands shook as I dug deeper. Emails between my father and the research team ordering them to alter the data. Financial records showing millions in hush money paid to silence whistleblowers. And most damning of all, proof that we'd been deliberately acquiring and shutting down competing drugs that might have actually helped people. Preston Pharmaceuticals, my family's legacy for 3 generations, wasn't just committing fraud. They were actively suppressing life-saving medications to protect their market share. I was still copying files when my father's private line rang. The caller ID showed M. Chen, Martin Chen, our head of security. "Sir," Chen's voice echoed through the speaker. The system flagged unauthorized access to Project Phoenix files. My blood ran cold. I hadn't considered that the files might be monitored. "From where?" Dad's voice was sharp. "Your office computer, sir. Started about an hour ago." A pause. "Julia." "Yes, sir. Should I?" "No. I'll handle it. But put the plan in motion, just in case." The plan. Something in his tone made me move faster, copying everything I could find onto an encrypted drive. I had just pulled the drive free when the office door opened. Dad stood there, still in his dinner jacket from the charity gala he'd attended. His face was calm, but his eyes were steel. "Working late, sweetheart?" "Just catching up on some reports," I said, slipping the drive into my pocket. He stepped into the office, closing the door behind him. Funny thing about reports, they usually don't require accessing classified research files. "Dad, how much did you see?" I met his gaze steadily. "Enough." He nodded slowly, as if I'd confirmed something. "I was afraid of this. You always were too smart for your own good." "The trials failed," I said. "People died, and you covered it all up." "We did what was necessary." "Necessary?" My voice rose. "You buried evidence that could have saved lives. You're still marketing that drug as safe. Keep your voice down." He moved to his desk, pressed a button on his phone. "Martin, proceed." The office door opened again. Martin Chen entered, followed by 2 men I'd never seen before. "What's going on?" I asked, though I already knew. "You're having a breakdown," Dad said softly. "The stress of the job, the responsibility. It's all become too much. I'm not. The private facility is very discreet. He continued as if I hadn't spoken. You'll have the best care money can buy. I backed away from the approaching men. You can't do this. Of course I can. I'm your father. His smile was gentle, reasonable. I'm protecting you, just like always. By committing fraud, by hurting people, by building something that will last. His voice hardened. Something you're now threatening to destroy. I lunged for the door, but Chen was faster. His grip on my arm was professional, impersonal. Your choice, Dad said. Go quietly to the facility, rest, recover. $2 million in a private account when you're better. Or, the threat hung in the air. I thought of the whistleblowers who'd been silenced. How many of them had simply disappeared? How long? Until you're well again. He meant, until they were sure I wouldn't talk. I let my shoulders slump, projecting defeat. Can I at least pack a bag? Already taken care of. Chen gestured to the door where a small suitcase waited. They'd planned this. Probably had it ready for weeks, just in case. Julia. Dad's voice softened. This is for the best. The company, our family's legacy. It's bigger than any one person. I looked at him, really looked at the man who taught me right from wrong, who'd encouraged me to always tell the truth. Now he was burying the truth along with his daughter's freedom. You'll see, he said. In time, you'll understand. I let Chen lead me out, past the family photos on the wall. Mom, gone 10 years now. Smiling from behind her desk as chairman of the board. Michael and me at graduation, both heading for our predetermined roles in the family business. Generations of Prestons building their pharmaceutical empire. All of it built on lies. The drive felt heavy in my pocket as we took the private elevator to the garage. They hadn't searched me. Why would they? I was just their broken little girl, having a mental health crisis. Chen's men escorted me to a waiting car with tinted windows. As we pulled away from Preston Pharmaceuticals' gleaming headquarters, I caught my father watching from his office window. He raised his hand in what looked like a wave goodbye. He had no idea it was really goodbye. The facility is very comfortable, Chen said from the front seat. Private room, garden access, all the amenities. I said nothing, letting them think I was sedated by whatever they'd slipped into my water back in Dad's office. Amateur move, really. I'd seen it coming and only pretended to drink. 3 hours later, they delivered me to Aurora Grove Wellness Center, a beautiful estate nestled in the Berkshire Mountains. The kind of place rich families sent their problems to disappear. Welcome, Ms. Preston, the intake nurse said warmly. We'll take good care of you. I'm sure you will, I thought. Right up until I escape. The drive was still in my pocket, heavy with secrets that could bring down an empire. My father thought he was buying my silence with $2 million and a padded cell. What he'd really done was give me everything I needed to destroy him. I smiled at the nurse, playing my role. Thank you. I'm so tired. Of course you are, dear. Let's get you settled. As she led me inside, I was already planning. They thought I was having a breakdown. Really? I was just getting started. Aurora Grove Wellness Center was a prison disguised as paradise. The gardens were beautiful, the staff unfailingly polite, and every window was fitted with unbreakable glass. Your father calls daily to check on your progress, Dr. Wells told me during our morning session. He's very concerned about your delusions. I smiled vacantly, playing the dutiful patient. The medication helps. Everything seems clearer now. She made a note in her file. They all loved making notes, documenting my supposed recovery from paranoid fantasies about corporate fraud. What they didn't know was that I was documenting everything too. The drive with Preston Pharmaceuticals' secrets was safe, hidden in the one place they'd never check. Inside the cheap plastic cross I'd been allowed to keep for religious comfort. But that wasn't the only evidence I was gathering. Every day, I added to my mental inventory of Aurora Grove, staff rotations, security protocols, delivery schedules. I made friends with other patients, particularly those who had their own reasons to want out. Like Safia, a hedge fund manager's wife who'd threatened to expose his Ponzi scheme. They all said I was crazy too, she whispered during art therapy. Turns out being right looks a lot like being insane. Or Marcus, a former tech executive whose depression coincided with discovering his company's data mining operations. He taught me to hack the facility's supposedly secure Wi-Fi during our shared recreation time. The best prison, he explained, is one where the inmates think they deserve to be there. I also had an unexpected ally on the outside, Sarah Zhang, a junior researcher who'd worked on the failed drug trials. She'd reached out through a carefully encrypted email sent during one of my sanctioned internet sessions. I saved copies too, she wrote, and I know where the bodies are buried. Literally, in one case. Let me help. Slowly, methodically, I built my network and planned my escape. The facility's security was good, but it was designed to keep unstable patients in, not to stop a clear-headed woman with resources and determination. 3 months into my treatment, I made my move. It started with a fire alarm at 3 a.m. Not a real fire, just a clever bit of programming Marcus had planted in the system. As staff rushed to follow evacuation protocols, I slipped out through the kitchen delivery entrance. Using an ID card I'd carefully cloned during my volunteer work in the administrative office. A car was waiting, driven by Sarah, who'd taken a considerable risk coming in person. Your father's security team checks on me weekly, she said as we sped away. They have no idea I'm the one who first tipped you off about the trials. I changed clothes in the back seat, transforming from patient to professional. Where are we going? Somewhere they'll never look for you. That somewhere turned out to be a small tech startup in Seattle, run by Marcus's former protégé. They needed a CFO who understood both finance and ethics. I needed a base of operations and legitimate income that couldn't be traced to Julia Preston. Emma Walsh was hired the next day, her impeccable references and background all carefully constructed by Marcus's network of disillusioned tech experts. Your father's going crazy trying to find you, Sarah reported during one of our secure video calls. He's hired private investigators, put pressure on local police. He really thinks you've had some kind of breakdown and wandered off. What about Michael? Your brother's been named interim CFO. She hesitated. He's pushing forward with new trials. More aggressive ones. My hands clenched. More cover-ups? Worse, they're testing on vulnerable populations. People who won't be missed if something goes wrong. I had to move carefully. Simply exposing the evidence wasn't enough. Preston Pharmaceuticals had too many friends in high places, too many ways to bury the truth. I needed to build an airtight case that not even their army of lawyers could dismantle. For 2 years, I lived as Emma Walsh, earning trust and respect in Seattle's tech community while quietly gathering more evidence. Sarah kept me updated on Preston Pharmaceuticals' activities, documenting every violation, every cover-up. Marcus, who'd engineered his own recovery and release, helped me establish secure communication channels with other whistleblowers. Former employees, research subjects, family members of victims, all with pieces of the puzzle. Sophia, now free and divorced, used her financial expertise to trace the money trails. Shell companies, offshore accounts, slush funds for bribes. It was all documented and verified. "They're getting sloppy," she reported. "Your brother doesn't have your head for numbers. He's leaving traces everywhere." The final piece came from an unexpected source, my mother's old assistant, now retired. She contacted me through Sarah, revealing that my mother had kept her own secret files before her convenient heart attack 10 years ago. She knew something was wrong with the trial data, the assistant said. She was going to expose it all. Then suddenly she was dead. Natural causes, they said. But nothing about Preston Pharmaceuticals was natural. I received regular updates about my family from Sarah. Dad was showing signs of strain, drinking more, sleeping less. Michael was living large on company money, dating supermodels, making increasingly erratic decisions. "They think they're invincible," Sarah said. "The great Preston family, above the law." "Everyone's invincible until they're not," I replied. By the third year, my case was solid. Every piece of evidence verified, every witness prepared, every document authenticated. The SEC was quietly building their own investigation based on anonymous tips, and the FDA was reviewing the trial data with growing concern. It was time. I chose the annual shareholders meeting for my return. Dad always made it a big event. Hundreds of investors, media coverage, a celebration of Preston Pharmaceuticals' continued dominance of the industry. This year would be different. I stood in front of my hotel mirror, transforming back into Julia Preston. The Seattle tech executive disappeared, replaced by the prodigal daughter returned from her breakdown. My phone buzzed. "Sarah, security's been updated since you left. New protocols, new team. But not new enough," I said, thinking of the access codes Marcus had acquired. "Is everything in place?" "SEC agents are standing by. FDA representatives too." And she paused. "There's something else you should know. About your mother's death." I gripped the phone tighter. "What about it?" "I found her real autopsy report. The one that wasn't released to the press." Her voice was grim. "Julia, it wasn't a heart attack. The toxicology showed." "Tell me everything." I cut in. "I want to know exactly what they did." As she talked, I felt the last traces of doubt or mercy fade away. This wasn't just about corporate fraud anymore. This was about murder, corruption, and a family that had lost its soul in pursuit of profit. Tomorrow, the Preston empire would fall, and I would be there to watch it burn. I checked my reflection one final time. Professional suit, perfect makeup, not a hint of the past 3 years visible on my face. I looked exactly like the daughter they tried to erase. But I wasn't that woman anymore. That Julia Preston had died in a mountain facility 3 years ago. This Julia Preston was back for revenge. And she had receipts. Preston Pharmaceuticals' annual shareholders meeting was held in the grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton. 3 years ago, I would have been at the head table, reviewing quarterly reports and profit projections. Today, I watched from the lobby as investors filed in, all eager to hear about another record-breaking year. If they only knew what their money was really funding. "SEC agents are in position," Sarah murmured through my earpiece. "FDA representatives too. Just waiting for your signal." I checked my phone one last time. Everything was ready. The evidence organized, the witnesses prepared, the regulatory agencies standing by. 3 years of work culminating in the next hour. "Any sign of security noticing me?" I asked, adjusting my visitor's badge. Amazing what Marcus's hacking skills could accomplish. They're watching for Julia Preston, the mental patient, Sarah replied. Not Julia Preston, the corporate executive. Your father's been telling everyone you're in a facility in Switzerland. They're not even looking here. I smiled. Dad's cover story had actually helped me. Everyone was expecting a broken woman, not someone who'd spent 3 years building a case against her own family. The ballroom was packed when I slipped in. My father stood at the podium, silver-haired and imposing in his perfectly tailored suit. Michael sat to his right, scrolling through his phone with his usual bored expression. Preston Pharmaceuticals continues to lead the industry in innovative treatments, Dad was saying. Our latest drug trials show unprecedented success rates. I thought of the real trial data hidden in my encrypted files, the covered-up deaths, the falsified results. And now, he continued, I'm pleased to announce our newest initiative. Actually, I said, standing up in the middle of the crowd, I'd like to make an announcement first. The room fell silent. Dad squinted into the audience, not recognizing me at first. Then his face went pale. Julia? Hi, Dad. I started walking toward the podium. Miss me? Michael finally looked up from his phone. His eyes widened in shock. Security, Dad barked, but I was already moving. Before anyone does anything rash, I said loudly, you might want to turn on CNBC. Right now. Someone did. On the massive screens around the ballroom, the breaking news headline appeared. Preston Pharmaceuticals under federal investigation. SEC and FDA raid corporate HURTERs. What is this? Michael demanded, standing up. What have you done? Me. I reached the stage. I just organized the evidence. All those files you thought disappeared with me. They've spent the last 3 years being verified by federal investigators. Dad's hands gripped the podium. Julia, you're not well. You need help. That's your answer for everything, isn't it? I cut him off. Anyone who threatens your precious company must be crazy. Just like Mom was crazy when she discovered the truth about the trials. Your mother died of natural causes, he said quickly. Too quickly. I pulled out my phone, held it up. Actually, I have her real autopsy report. The one that shows lethal levels of your miracle drug in her system. The one that proves you murdered her when she threatened to expose you. The room erupted in chaos. Investors started shouting questions. Reporters who'd been covering the standard corporate event suddenly had a much bigger story. You can't prove anything, Michael sneered. But his face had gone ashen. Can't I? I turned to address the crowd. For the past 3 years, I've been gathering evidence. Real clinical trial data. Financial records showing millions in bribes and hush money. Witness testimony from researchers, test subjects, even former executives. She's delusional, Dad tried, but his voice shook. Security? Remove her. Your security team is currently busy with federal agents. I smiled. And speaking of federal agents, right on cue, the ballroom doors opened. FBI agents poured in, followed by SEC investigators and FDA officials. William Preston, the lead agent announced, you're under arrest for securities fraud, conspiracy, and first-degree murder. Dad stared at me as they approached with handcuffs. Everything I did, he said quietly, was to protect this company, our legacy. No, I replied. Everything you did was to protect your own power, even if it meant killing your wife, destroying your daughter. hurting countless innocent people. You'll regret this, Michael hissed as agents moved to arrest him too. You're nothing without this family. I watched as they led my father and brother away in handcuffs. The great Preston men, finally facing consequences. Sarah appeared at my side. Your mother's old assistant is here, ready to testify about what really happened 10 years ago. I nodded. Make sure she's protected. They still have friends who might try to silence her. The next few hours were a blur of federal interviews, press statements, and shocked shareholders trying to salvage their investments. Preston Pharmaceuticals stock was already in free fall. What happens now? Sarah asked as we watched agents box up evidence from Dad's office. Now, I picked up the family photo from his desk. Mom, Dad, Michael and me, all smiling for the camera, all pretending to be perfect. Now the truth comes out. All of it. Over the next few weeks, the Preston empire crumbled. The evidence was ironclad, the witnesses credible, the paper trail undeniable. Dad and Michael faced multiple life sentences. The company was placed under federal supervision. New management was brought in to salvage what could be saved. The toxic drugs were pulled from the market, and research began into actually helping people instead of just making profit. I testified at their trial, laying out every detail of their crimes. Dad never looked at me. Michael tried to cut a deal, offering to testify against our father, but the prosecutors didn't need him. They had everything they needed. The press called it the pharmaceutical scandal of the decade. Movies were optioned, books were written. Everyone wanted to know how the Preston princess had brought down her own family's corrupt empire. But I wasn't interested in fame. I had a different mission now. 6 months after the arrests, I stood at my mother's grave. The official cause of death had been updated, her murder finally acknowledged. I did it, Mom, I said softly. I finished what you started. Sarah joined me, carrying a stack of papers. The new board wants you to take over as CEO, she said. Help rebuild the company the right way. I considered it. The chance to transform Preston Pharmaceuticals into what it should have been all along, a company that actually helped people. On one condition, I said. We rename it after Mom. Sarah smiled. Catherine Pharmaceuticals does have a nice ring to it. I placed flowers on the grave, thinking about legacy and truth, and the real meaning of family. Dad and Michael would spend the rest of their lives in prison, paying for their crimes. The corrupt empire they'd built had fallen, but something new could rise from the ashes. Something honest. Ready to get to work? Sarah asked. I took one last look at the grave, then turned toward the future. Always. 1 year later, I sat in the CEO's office, my office, reviewing the latest trial results. Real results this time, showing promise for treating previously incurable conditions. A news alert popped up on my computer. William Preston found dead in prison cell, apparent suicide. I closed the alert without reading it. The past was done. I had a company to run, people to help, wrongs to right. My phone buzzed, a text from Marcus. Your father left a letter for you. Burn it, I replied. Some chapters needed to stay closed. Catherine Pharmaceuticals was thriving, its stock price recovering as investors recognized our commitment to ethical research and development. The same drive for excellence that had corrupted my father was now being used to save lives. Sarah knocked on my door. Ready for the board meeting? I gathered my papers, straightened my jacket, and stood up. The family portrait that once dominated this office was gone, replaced by my mother's medical school graduation photo. She was smiling, full of hope, and purpose. Just like I was now. Ready? I said. The Preston legacy was dead, but something better had taken its place. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just exposing the truth. It's building something true from the ruins of lies.